I know a lot of Notion users hate the word aesthetic because that somehow means that the workspace isn't good. But I discovered that aesthetics actually makes Notion more effective, not less. Honestly, I can't blame them for thinking the opposite because I used to be that way too. For example, in my business CRM, even though adding a contact can be done by just clicking here, typing the name, and then clicking new, instead I would have a whole button just to create a new contact and saving me one extra click. Or this is one of the worst ones. I used to absolutely hate the side peek view because the animation was a little slower compared to the center peek view by a few milliseconds. It's insane, but now you know the level of efficiency I'm trying to achieve. But ever since I upgraded my habit tracker from this to this, I realized I started doing my habits a lot more, probably because the grid was so pleasing and satisfying to the eyes. Plus, it also added way more features compared to the old habit tracker. I no longer have to go to the summary page to see my progress because of the grid already showing in each of the habits. I don't have to change views every day because it automatically refreshes each day, and it's just so much more flexible and simply better. And that's when I realized that aesthetics does not equal less efficient or more complicated. It's really up to our own creativity to create a system that both looks good and is also productive. The weird thing is that because I've always had this false belief in my mind that aesthetics means that my workspace would be slower and more complicated, I didn't give the side peek view a proper chance, and now that I did, I realized that the side peek view is actually more efficient. Sure, center peek view still does open a few milliseconds faster, but because the side peek view provides so much more vertical space, you don't need to scroll as much to see all the information. That doesn't mean I'm going to start making everything aesthetic and ignoring efficiency completely. I believe there is an aesthetic to efficiency balance. Too aesthetic and you risk wasting time. Too efficient and the users will be overwhelmed. Let me show you what I mean instead. I recently tried to improve my gamified to-do list that uses Eisenhower matrix within my gamification template called UltiGame. I ended up creating two versions, one of which is the aesthetic version and another is the more efficient one. You'll notice that the aesthetic version is much more fun to use, but it's a lot slower because you have to drag each task to its own category. So if let's say you have 30 tasks that haven't been categorized yet, that would take quite a bit of time. And that's why I created the second version, where all you have to do is select the property here, which is much faster but is slightly more complicated. The aesthetics of it are also reduced quite significantly, and the users might get overwhelmed because there are a lot of things getting thrown in their face at once. I personally would use the second version because I created a system myself, so I understand it more. But once I update the versions for other users, I would leave both versions, but I believe most people would prefer the aesthetic version instead. And this brings me to another point. The more aesthetic your system is, the more people will use it. Think of it like a command line interface versus the exact same software but with a graphical user interface instead. Although CLI is more efficient and faster, most people would find it too complicated and would rather sacrifice a little bit of efficiency for better aesthetics. For example, GitHub Desktop versus Git CLI. Most beginners would use the first one because it's much easier to understand initially. Another way to think about it is like a YouTube thumbnail. You could have the most valuable video, but if your thumbnail isn't good, nobody is going to watch it. And this is really important if you are creating a Notion system for collaboration purposes with your team members, especially for those that have not used Notion before. Make it extremely simple and aesthetic to increase the adoption of your system. I've seen a lot of business owners make the same mistake. In fact, I did the same too. We assume everyone would understand the system that we do, and spoiler alert, they don't. Eventually, if you make it too efficient, ignoring the aesthetics, they will just give up trying to understand and stop using the system you created. If you're going to use Notion AI to build an aesthetic system, click on this video to see which is the best AI among all the available AI models.